and I work for American Crafts, and I am the project design team manager there at American Crafts. So I have the really fun job of getting to work with all of the amazing crafting product that's out there in the world. And today in class, I'm excited to do some paper crafting. I love paper crafting. It was how I started in crafting at all, and am excited to show you some fun things you can do for the holidays using an awesome tool by We Are Memory Keepers called the Mold Press to make some super special showcase worthy shaker cards. So yesterday I taught a class and we did batch cards where we're doing a ton of cards that are all the same in batches so that you could send them out to all of your friends and family for the holidays or use them as tags, things like that. But today we're going to do shaker cards that are a lot more special. So these cards are using the mold press machine, but you can see here that they are have dimension to them. They have little scenes inside of them. It's going to be really fun. So these are for showcasing and giving to that special someone. These are cards that you will need to send in the mail if you send in the mail as parcels, because they are too thick to go through the letter sorters at the post office. So, but they're going to be really fun. Okay, first off, I want to start by introducing you to the mold press machine because I love this machine. And I don't know if you guys have seen this before. I know that Ali Dosdal, my friend and coworker, has taught some awesome classes for Michaels using the mold press machine. I encourage you to go and watch those because she covers a lot of the things that the mold press machine can do. It basically, what it does is it allows you to heat up plastic sheets and create molds from anything that you want to, anything that you have at your house. And we're going to use those molds today as the little pocket for our shaker card to hold our sprinkles and our snow and things like that. But you can also use the molds for doing chocolates, soaps, candles. The possibilities are really endless. So I encourage you to look outside of the shaker card box after you attend this class and see what else you can do with the mold press machine. So that's really what I'm going to focus on using it for today. So the mold press machine is basically, it takes a couple of parts. So you have this machine, there's a heating element in the top right here, and I already have mine turned on, and you're going to want to turn your mold press machine on about 10 minutes before you start wanting to use it so that it has time to fully heat this heat element at the top. And then you have this frame. It's a magnetic frame, comes apart really, really easily. It's clearly labeled top and bottom. There's the top, there's the bottom. And it magnets up into the top of this to hold our plastic sheet. So we put our plastic sheet in here, holds it up against the top. And then the base deck is a 5.5-inch base. So I said you can mold anything. Well, it has to fit on that 5.5-inch base. So there is that one restriction. But this has airflow that goes through it. And so you can see here this hose at the back. This is just the hose to my shop vac. And it's the We Are Memory Keepers shop vac, which is cute and teal and matches this one, but really you can use this mold press machine with any vacuum cleaner, and it does have an adapter so that if your hose isn't the exact size for this, comes with an adapter. You just plug it onto the hose of your vacuum and you plug that vacuum into the back of the mold press. So the things that create your mold are the plastic sheet being heated by the top element, and then when you bring it down over the top of your item down here, the suction from your vacuum cleaner will mold that heated plastic all around your item and make a reusable mold that you can use for anything that you want to. So let's get started by putting a piece of plastic in to start getting warm. So these are the plastic sheets right here, and they are a number 7 recyclable PEG. Let me get it right. PETG, I knew I was forgetting the T, plastic sheet. So you can recycle your scraps from these. The first thing you want to do, I'm going to scoot this over so you can kind of see better on the blue mat. This is why I put a blue mat down so you could kind of see this. So these have a protective piece of film on both sides of the plastic. So you want to take that off before you put it in your machine. I always just use my teeth on the corner to get it started. That's probably not the greatest, but so you can see I'm just pulling off this little extra plastic sheet, and it's on both sides. So you want to pull that off as well. It's just like a cling film that keeps this part of the plastic nice and smooth and clean. Okay, so I've opened up my frame right here, And then there's these little guides inside of it that help you perfectly place this plastic sheet in here. Now I know that we've gotten questions if you can use other plastic, and we recommend using these mold press plastic sheets because they're the ones we've tested with the machine and we know that they work beautifully. So we really don't recommend using other plastic. We know this one works and won't damage your machine. Okay, so now I've just magneted the lid back on, and you can see I have the top right here. And now I'm just going to place it in my machine. We might have to switch back and forth to the front and back view. There we go. Thanks, Stacy. So, and then this just magnets right up at the top, and you can see that it just easily grabs on right at the top. Now, I'm just going to let that sit. The guide we say is if you're doing something that's a 1/2 inch or smaller, to let it heat for about 1.5 minutes. And if you're doing something that's between 1/2 inch and 2 inches, then let it go for 2 minutes. And we don't really recommend molding things that are much taller than that. We found that those things work best, those sizes. And these bars right here have measurements on them. And this plastic, as it heats, you're going to start to see it start to droop down, and it starts to make this nice big bubble underneath. And that's how you know that it's ready. But you can also use the measurement guides here on the inside of the frame of the machine to let you know if it has melted down enough to mold. The instructions for all of that come in with the mold press too. So if you have a mold press, keep that little instruction booklet because there's lots of tips and tricks in there that can help you to have success using your mold press machine. Okay, so now what are we going to mold? Our plastic is heating up. So since we're making shaker cards for the holidays, and I am actually teaching you from home today because my family is quarantining right now, as many of us are, right? So I just looked around my house to see what I had, and in our Christmas stuff, I just had this little gift box. So I'm going to use the lid of this little cardboard, like jewelry size gift box. Some other things I'm going to mold today are jar lids. This is just a jar from some glitter that I had, and I'm going to use the lid of that. You can use cookie cutters. This is a cookie cutter that we're going to use today, and you can see that I filled it with some clay. And the reason that I did that is so that when I'm molding my mold, if I didn't have this center part full, my mold would just go all the way down inside of my cookie cutter and make this tiny little skinny mold of the cookie cutter, right? So since I want this whole entire star shape to be what my mold, I've just put some Play-Doh inside of it. We Are Memory Keepers makes a polymer clay that I actually recommend more than using Play-Doh because this has dried a little, and it kind of, as it dries, it shrinks a little bit. So it leaves a little gap. And when you use the polymer clay, it doesn't ever dry unless you bake it. So, you know, you can just fill it up and you can pull it back out and reuse your cookie cutter and reuse your polymer clay in another mold. So I just didn't have any at home. So I used what I had, which was nabbing some Play-Doh from the kids' toys in my basement. So, okay, let's start. So here's my box lid. We're going to start with this rectangular shape. And really you can do any shape that you want of anything you have. I've used kids' toys, I've used puzzle pieces, I've cut shapes using my cutting machine and just stacked them all up to the height that I want and made a shape that way. You can do all kinds of things with this mold press. So I'm just going to set that on the base deck, and I'm going to check on my bubble. It's looking really good. Actually, I think it might be ready to go. So I'm going to turn on my vacuum, so you might not be able to hear me very well for just a second, and I'll show you how to bring this frame down. So I'm going to turn my vacuum on. Then I'm just going to hold it with both hands, and I like to kind of push the frame up against the guide bars here a little bit, and it helps me to keep it straight. And then I'm just going to bring it down and around my box. And then I just let it cool there for just a second. You can see that I was kind of pushing the plastic up against it. So it's not too hot. They do make heat resistant gloves. I kind of say that sometimes my fingers are really like desensitized to heat from all my hot gluing in my days, but they do have heat resistant gloves, so you can push against the plastic while it's still warm if you want to. So here's our little mold that we made. So you can see the box is inside that plastic. So now I just open this up, take it out. I like to let it cool a little bit when I'm working with this before I take the item out that I've molded, because I don't want to distort that plastic in any way when I take the piece that I've molded out. So let me move this mold press over because we're going to make a card out of this one. And we'll go back to that in a minute. Okay, So now I'm just going to gently press down on my mold, and it just comes right out. So now you can see I can still use this box. It's still in perfect shape. It hasn't hurt it at all. I'm just going to set that aside. And now I have this mold. You can kind of see it a little better there, of the shape of the box. And so now we're going to make our little shaker card out of it. So this is the shaker card that we're going to make. It's got a little scene in there. And really, you can put anything you want to inside these shaker cards. I'm going to show you a few ideas, but just your imagination can run wild with this, and you can really put anything you want to inside of them. The other thing that we're going to use on our shaker cards is this awesome paper pad that I got at Michael's. I love it when they put their Christmas stuff out. I said this yesterday in my class, but seriously, it's so fun to go walk through and see all of the decor and all of the new crafting items. This is a really fun pastel Christmas paper pad, and I really liked that. It's called Sugarplums by Recollections, and it's got all these nice pinks and purples, mint, snowflakes, candies, framables, just so cute. And it's got like greens. So you can see that I'm just going to use this one paper pad to make all of the cards that we're making today. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do, we have our mold, and we're going to take our scissors. This plastic is really easy to just cut with scissors. So I'm going to work kind of over here so you guys can see a little bit better on that blue. And I'm just going to cut away about 1/4 to 1/2 inch around my mold that I've made of my box.
Hey, Shannon, while you're doing that, we have a question.
Awesome.
Cheryl wants to know if once you're done cutting the mold out, can you reuse the scraps at all?
You can. And I know that Allie, in one of her classes, Allie Dosdall, she taught that you can actually take this piece of extra and use the scrap to back the shaker card, which my things that I molded were a little bit larger than what she had done. And so I didn't have, you can see my scrap are these little skinny strips. But yeah, you can reuse these if you have an idea of what to use with the skinny strips, or you can recycle them, which is what I'm going to do with these because they're kind of thin. But you can use them in other windows, in window cards or tags. Yeah, you can definitely reuse it. It's great. It doesn't damage it at all to make the mold. It has a little bit of a texture on it, but it's really slight once you've molded it just from that base deck sucking down on it. So I'm going to recycle mine. So I'm going to put them in my recycle pile. And you can reuse these molds too if you're not using them like I'm using it today as the mold is my card. But if I wanted to make a bar of soap out of this, you can use this as many times as you want to make soap or clean it really well. And then you can use the same mold to make chocolate bar if you wanted to. So it is definitely reusable and recyclable. So it's great to use that way. Okay, so I have my little box, my shaker window, and then I've just made a card that is a 5.5 by 4 1/4 card. So I took a 8.5 by 11 by 5.5 piece of white cardstock and folded it in half. Now on my class list, I had a cardstock pack that had all those same beautiful pastel colors that match this paper pad that we're using today. But I didn't have that with me at home when I had to quarantine, so I just used white, which is what I had. But feel free to like sub in colors, do whatever you want to as your bases for your cards. It's fun having different colors. Since my base was white, I went ahead and cut out a piece from the paper pad. This is just a corner of one of the pattern papers. It's a soft pink, and I just cut it 1/4 inch in. So it's 5 1/4 by 4. And that just allowed a little edge of white to go around so that when I put my frame on top of my shaker, that the pink isn't going to peek out. Okay, so I've done that already. Now, what are we going to put inside here? So the next thing that I did is I love this piece of paper from the paper pad. It's just super cute, but I really liked these branches up here at the top. And you can see on this card that that's those same little branches. And I cut a frame that is the same size as my card. So this I actually cut on my Cricut machine, but you could do it just by using your paper trimmer. So it's still 5.5 by 4 1/4. It's the same size. And then you could take your box lid and put it in the center and then just trace around it and cut out the center. Or you can measure your box lid and then cut it out using your Cricut or Silhouette machine. Okay, and so that's what I did. And then to get it having a pattern, I like doing it on cardstock first, just because sometimes the corners of the mold are a little bit sharp on the edge, and sometimes they will tear through my pattern paper. So I like to do a little reinforcement with cardstock on the back. And so then I just took it on the back, and you can see I've already traced it here, but I just lined this up to where those branches were, right? Traced it with pencil, and then I'm just going to cut it out. You could also, if you've made a cut file really simply in your cutting machine, you can just go ahead and cut it again out of your pattern paper if you want to. But because I wanted this one right up at the corner, I decided to trace it and do it this way. So now I'm going to save the rest of this to use on something else. Okay. All right. And then you can use your paper trimmer to cut this out by just lining up the line in the track, or you can use scissors to cut it out. I'm just going to turn it and line that up. Cut down.
We have one more question.
Okay.
Virginia asked, do you need a heavy pair of scissors to cut the plastic off the mold?
I have used, these are a Heidi Swap scissor that are just a standard paper scissor. So they're not super heavy duty. They're just a standard larger paper scissor. I like the larger ones, but I've also cut them with these little guys, which are just my little fussy cutting scissors. I've used both and they work. It's not super thick, so it's pretty easy to cut through. Okay. Oops, I got that one just a smidge off, so I'm going to trim it one more time. Okay. So now you can see I've cut this matching little frame. You can save that little piece too. This little piece, I'm all about keeping my scraps because this little piece, if I was to make a second one, would make a perfect backer on the inside of there, see? So you can keep that little piece and make another mold. Okay, so now I have my little frames that match. And I'm just gonna adhere them to each other using a tape runner. You can use whatever adhesive you prefer. I like tape runners when I'm paper crafting. They just tend to not wrinkle as much as others. Okay, now I've reinforced my frame. That's gonna go around my shaker.
We got one more question from Manny. He asked what brand, I think he says cutter. I think he means the paper trimmer.
This trimmer? This is just one I have at home. It's a Fisker's paper trimmer. This one's an older one. I don't know if they come in purple anymore, but there's a wide variety on michaels.com that you can look at for paper trimmers and just find one that's the size and type that you prefer. This one just slides. It has this blade is what I replaced to sharpen it. And I've used American Crafts cutters, I've used Fiskars, I've used Cricut cutters before. So there's a lot of them out there and you just find one that you prefer. This one has an arm that swings out so that you can, it kind of takes less space. So I liked that about it, but they do make larger ones as well. So you can use any trimmer you like. You just find the one that you like. Okay, so now I'm going to decide where my little deer and my tree are going to line up inside of here. And by doing that, I'm just going to open this up. This is really thick cardstock that I used that I had at home. So I'm going to open it up like this, and I'm going to take my little deer. So these little guys, I just got on the Christmas aisle, kind of by the little Christmas village supplies at Michael's. That's where I found these little guys. And these trees actually were a darker green when I got them. So this is the color that they were right there. And they came in a variety of sizes. So these are just the smallest ones from the pack. And I wanted them to be a little bit more mint and maybe even pink like this one. So I just took the spray paint, the little tiny spray paint cans that are on the class supply list, and I just spray painted these real quick to just soften them up to match my pastel vibe that I have going on for my paper pad. So these little bottle brush trees are really easy to spray paint. They take the paint really well. Okay, so that's how I made them pink and mint. And this space I know is a little bit shorter than my tree. So I'm just going to squish down. You can see there, I'm just kind of squishing down the bristles on one side. And that's the side that I'm going to glue down into my tree. Now into my shaker. So I'm going to just use a little bit of hot glue to do that. You can use foam dots. You can use glue dots. And I'm going to do it a little bit higher than I want it, because I want the snow to kind of lay under here when I fill my shaker. And I'm just using this as a guide as to where I want them placed. That's why I've laid that on there. So I'm just gonna hot glue a couple little spots on the back of my little baby deer. Turn it around and just kind of line it up to my tree. So I have a lot of open space up here. So what could I put up here? Well, there's this awesome paper pad. I love utilizing what I have already purchased as much as I can. And so this paper pad has all these little snowflakes that are gold foiled. So cute. And so I just took my scissors and cut out a couple of the snowflakes from here. And you could even use these little snowflakes as filler as well if you wanted to. And I just took my scissors, and I'm not worrying too much. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm not worrying too much about getting all of that background off. I don't mind if it has a little color peeking around. And I'm just going to trim out some snowflakes. The more you do this little fussy cutting, this is called fussy cutting technique, the faster you get at it. So it's pretty easy to cut out those little snowflakes. And now I'm just going to place them up in this area to make it look like a little bit more snow is falling. And this one I'm going to actually let go behind the frame a little bit. And I'm just using my same tape runner. You could use whatever adhesive you prefer, just to give a little more interest up in this area. You could also use a different paper pattern paper behind here if you wanted to give it more visually interest. Okay, all right, now we're going to build our little shaker. Our base is ready. So now I'm just going to take my tape runner. I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to run it along the edges of the mold that we made. Okay, got a little bit of a hot glue string going on. Okay, and then I'm just going to adhere it to the inside of my frame. And I like doing it from this side so that I can see how it needs to be centered in there. Okay. And then I'm just going to press around the edges to adhere that down. Okay. So this box has some little sharp corners on the edges. So I'm actually finding it's wanting to pop up off of it. So I'm actually going to use some foam squares, just because these edges are coming out just a little bit on my mold. So you can see my process here, right? As I'm figuring out how to make it work. So I'm just going to use some foam dots instead to make sure that I have good adhesion. So this is just a piercing tool. I like picking up my foam dots and taking the papers off of them with my piercing tool. So I'm actually going to go around the edge of my frame with these foam dots. Not on the corners, because I already know that my mold is a little puffy there on the corners, which is why I need to do this with foam dots. And it's just so that I can get it a little more flat. Oop, I stuck that one to my finger.
Okay. Virginia asked, is there a way to make the edges smoother?
I probably could have heated my plastic just a smidge longer, and it would have molded down a little tighter to the edge. I might have rushed it just a little bit because I wasn't timing it. So I do recommend, and so does Allie Dosdall, actually, from We Are Memory Keepers, using a little kitchen timer and setting it for the 2 minutes. And then you will usually always have success. But I don't have a portable kitchen timer. I only have the one that's on my phone, which I'm using to teach the class. And so I didn't have that as a guide. But if I would have just let it go a little longer, the plastic, before I pulled it down over the mold, it probably would have been smoother because I didn't have to do it on this one. Okay, I'm just going to put one more in each corner to just kind of keep it level. Now you're learning my pop dot secret. I love these little guys. These are just foam with a double-sided adhesive. Use them a lot in crafting. And I like to use my piercing tool to help me get those on and off there. Okay. So I'm going to first stick this to my, that's much better. So you can just see that that's just holding my frame. And since it had a little bit of curve there on the corner, now it's nice and smooth and flat. Okay. And then we need to add our snow in here before we stick it onto here. Okay, so the snow that I'm going to use for this one, the filler, you can use any filler you want to. This is the snow I'm using, which is also from that Christmas Village area of Michael's. It's just these little foil iridescent plastic snowflakes. And I'm just going to put a tiny bit in there. It doesn't take hardly any because it's super puffy. And I'm going to kind of press it down into the bottom so it kind of stays where I want it to. And then I'm going to take my card, and since I've already adhered all of this on here, it's really easy to just flip it over and line it up to my shaker from the back.
We have another question from Manny. He asked,
Sure.
Are the foam dots a permanent adhesive solution?
Yes, they are. Okay, so now you can see that we have our little snow shaker. They are permanent. You can rub them off, like if you want to move them, you can rub them off with your finger, but they stick really well. They hold really nicely. So now we have our little snow in there. And then the last thing I did was just add a sticker sentiment. So this was a holiday sticker set. I've used some of them on projects off this side, but you can see it had a bunch of different sentiments. I think I'll just pull this little joy and put that in the middle. You could also cut a little strip if you wanted to from your, maybe I'll put this one down below. Kind of like it down there better. There's that little sentiment. So you can also cut paper strips from the cut apart sheets in the paper pack and use those as sentiments as well. So here's my first one with the green tree and the Believe sticker. And then here's the one we just made together. Little bit different, but still really, really cute. And these are fun, like they look so cute standing up on a mantle. They're fun as a decoration and also fun to give to that special somebody. It's a little bit more special of a card. Okay, so we're gonna make 3 total today, maybe 4 if I have time. But this is the next one that I'm gonna show you using the cookie cutter as a mold. So this is the sticker from that little sticker set. And I use the same little snow filler in there as my shaker. And then this is actually a strip cut from the paper pad. So I'll show you how to put this one together really quick. Okay, so I need to get another piece of plastic heating up in my mold press. Just gonna clean up my area just a little bit so that I can move it back over. Okay, so I'm just gonna take my frame out again. The mold press is a really fun tool. It's really easy to use and it's really fun, all the things you can do with it.
Virginia asked,
teeth are always fast.
Virginia asked, how do you package the cards? You mentioned that it's a little too big to put in an envelope, correct?
Yes, so you need to send it in like a bubble mailer or in a little box as a parcel rather than as a letter. Okay, so I just put my plastic sheet in there and I'm gonna go ahead and put it up against the heat again and let that heat up for a couple of minutes. And this time what I used as my mold was this cookie cutter. This was just out of my stash of Christmas cookie cutters. And I just, again, filled the inside with Play-Doh. The polymer clay is my favorite way to fill the inside, so I would suggest doing that instead, just because it doesn't shrink at all. This one dried and shrinked in a little bit, you know, just like I have a little gap around the edge, but it won't affect my mold very much today, you'll see. But it is a fun way to use your cookie cutter. While my plastic's heating up, I'm going to get my card base ready and show you how I use the cookie cutter as a template for where to cut for my opening for my mold. So I have this one, since my cookie cutter is a little bit bigger, this card I went with a 5x7 size card. So my white base is a 10x7 inch piece of white cardstock, and I just folded that down the center. So that is going to be my base. And then I cut a coordinating 5x, well, it's a little bit smaller because I liked having the white border. So it's probably 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 of this snowflake patterned paper. And then I'm just going to use my cookie cutter because I'm going to set my cookie cutter in my mold press like this with this rim. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little rim around the outside edge of my bottom of my cookie cutter right there. And so I'm going to set it down just the same way so that my mold is going to come up through and still fit. So I'm going to just set it down right on here and kind of center it. You could measure to get it centered or just eyeball it. And then I'm going to take a pencil and just trace around the outside edge of my item that I molded. So this is similar to what we did with the box when we made the frame. We just traced around that piece that we molded, and that is the perfect pattern for where to cut your star out. So I'm just going to use my scissors. You could also actually, maybe I'll use my cutting knife since I have my healable mat here. I'm just going to use an X-Acto knife. You could use scissors too, and just cut around on that line. At least use my X-Acto knife to get it started. Okay, now I'll switch to my scissors. And you're not going to really need this inner part, so you can just cut right into it if you want to. And I did back this on cardstock again, just to give it a little bit more weight. That's why it's looking like it's harder to cut than just a regular pattern paper. It's because I'm cutting through a pattern paper that is adhered to a coordinating size of white cardstock. When I'm doing shaker cards, sometimes I just like it reinforced like that. I find it helps it stay sturdy. Okay, last little corner here. You can see that you can multitask while you're waiting for your plastic to heat up. Okay, and then I can just take my scissors inside here and clean up any little spots that I missed the pencil line. Since this shape was its own unique shape, I found this was easier than just doing a design in my Cricut or Silhouette software. With basic shapes, it's really easy to cut out the opening with using your cutting machine. For these like really stylized things, items that you're molding, sometimes I found that it's just better to just trace it, because then it's perfect. Because there might be a star in Cricut, in my Cricut software or Silhouette software, but it's not going to be exactly the shape of my mold. Now you can see my mold's going to fit in there just perfectly. Okay, let's check our plastic. Might need just a smidge more, but I'm going to go ahead and set my cookie cutter into my mold base deck. And I'm just centering them. You can put, if you have smaller things, you can put more than one in the base deck of here, as long as it fits in that 5.5 inch area. Let me check it one more time. Oh, it's got a nice bubble now. I think I'm going to try it. Okay, so I'm going to turn on my vacuum cleaner again. And just bring that down around there. You can tell it's got a good feel when it does that whistle. I don't know if you guys could hear that whistle. It was loud on my end. And I'm just going to push down on the corners just a little bit. When you have those sharp angled corners, sometimes they need a little finagling. Oop, and it came right out of my mold. So there's my mold. I didn't even have to try to get it out, just came right out on its own. Okay, let's scoot this over again so we have a little more working space. And now you can see my star mold right there that was made from my cookie cutter. So that would be a cute soap too, I think. I love that. And so these little creases that are right here are not going to affect anything in the mold, because this mold part is all clean and nice. So it's going to look great. Okay, I'm going to use my bigger scissors again. I just like using the bigger scissors. And I'm going to cut out around this again. Same thing we did before, where that crease is a little harder to cut. Maybe these smaller ones would actually be better. Yeah, they are. See? So I guess I just keep both pair of scissors nearby. I'm going to recycle these pieces as well. And I'm just going to kind of rough cut about 1/2 inch, 1/4 to 1/2 inch around my mold.
So Lisa says that she can't wait for Santa to deliver her mold press.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's super fun. That's a great thing to ask for Christmas. I love using it.
Carolyn says Do you have any other suggestions of what other crafts you can do with the machine?
I have done so many different things. So we and my team at work, and we've done customized chocolates. They're really fun. My kids really liked those because I could put their names on the chocolates. There's a lot of videos actually on wearememorykeepers.com. If you go there, they have a whole section of videos that explain a lot of different crafts that you can do. I know there's at least 10 project videos that you can watch there. We've done melted crayons. So we took a unicorn horn cake topper and made molds out of it, and then made unicorn horn crayons out of melted wax. It was really fun to do that. You can do customized chocolates. You can do, like, this box would be a good customized chocolate because you can just take thickers, those are puffy stickers, and write out a word on it and then make a mold of that. And then the word shows up in the mold as well. So you can put someone's name on it. You can put shapes on top of shapes. So if you wanted to do a dimensional soap that had maybe a heart on the top, you could just set a wooden heart on top of this box and mold it that way. And now you have 2 layers. So you can do a pink heart and then a white bar of soap or something like that. You can do marbled soaps. You can do candle melts, scented candle melts that you put in warmers. There's so many things that you can do with the mold press. It's super fun. And we've also done shakers on gift bags. So the shaker is like actually coming out of the gift bag or on a tag. It's fun. You can use it in paper crafting. I've made album covers with the molds and put glitter around the album cover, like a little frame for a little mini album. There's so many things that you can do. It's so fun. It's such a fun tool. Okay, so now I have my mold and it fits perfectly inside of here, but I want to draw a little, because this is a busy pattern paper, I want to draw a little bit of attention to the edge of my mold. As you can see here, there's a little line that I've just drawn, and that I just did with a pen, except that I didn't bring my pen over, so I'm going to do it with a pencil. But you would do this with a pen, and I just free-handed it just around the edge. I left my pen over at my other desk. And then you can kind of just freehand a border. And I found when I'm freehanding borders that if I go twice and kind of overlap the line, any mistake I made looks intentional. It's a little trick, right? Not going for perfection, just going for a little added cute element. This would be darker if it was in my black pen. Sorry that I forgot that. And then I just added a few little extra lines here and there, just to give it some interest. So you can see that when you do a double line and there's space between them, that it looks like it was on purpose and not that you were a crooked line drawer, right? Okay, so now we're gonna do the same thing that we did before. We're just gonna adhere this to this. And I don't think I need foam dots for this one. It's looking like it's gonna sit on there really nicely. So I'm gonna go ahead and do just my tape runner. And you can do the tape runner on the mold or on the paper, it doesn't really matter.
And, Manny asked, do you know how thick the plastic sheets are? About how thick?
They're really, really thin. I don't know, let me see. Can you see that? Not super thick. I use this as a backer on my shakers a lot too, and it works great. It's easy to cut. I don't have the exact measurement with me right here because I don't have the box that they came in, but I'm sure that information is also available on We Are Memory Keepers website. Okay, so now I've got my shaker in the front of my card and I'm ready to do a backer. And for this one's backer, I'm just gonna do, this is a cut apart sheet from the paper pad, and I like this little striped border right here. So you can use your paper trimmer or your scissors to cut it out. This is one of the little cut apart frames. I wanted to show you guys how you can use all parts of your paper pad as well and get a lot of use out of it. And so then I'm just going to slip that behind kind of see where I need it and use it as a guide. This is a cheat to kind of just get it to the right size. You could also cut it 5.5 inches wide or 5.25 inches wide because I cut this piece a little smaller. But sometimes it's just easier to just stick it on there and use it as a pattern. I'm all for quick crafting. We don't want it to take too long, even though these cards are a little bit more intense than others. Okay, so now I'm going to use another sticker from my sticker sheet. I think I'll use this tree this time to put inside of my card. And I'm just going to kind of place it in there again where I want it. Maybe I'll put a sentiment in there as well. We will do this little 25. Okay, make sure that that's going to line up right. It's going to look great. Okay, so if I had a little strip of paper or a stamp, you could add a sentiment inside the shaker that way as well if you wanted to. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put the snow in. And I'm just going to use this same snow again. Really takes hardly any. I've made a bunch of shakers with this bag and look how much is still in there. It's still like basically full. So you get really good use out of that one bag of snow. Okay, now I'm just going to put some adhesive around the outside of this. And actually, I'm going to use, well, I'm just going to use my tape runner. You can use this kind of double-sided tape as well if you want to. Really, it's just kind of a preference, whatever you like. You could also use 3D foam tape. The tape runner is not wanting to run. All right, we're skipping. My tape runner is wanting to not run. So I'm just going to do it with this double-sided tape real quick. Okay, I'm going to put it over here so maybe you can see better on that blue. I know when we get a lot of white on white, it makes it harder. And I'm just going to seal this in all the way around with my tape. I don't know, because my tape runner is having troubles. I don't know if I want to show you that whole thing, but basically I would go all the way around this with my tape, pull it off, or use your tape runner and pull it off, and then go ahead and place your backer on like that. And then you have your snow in your tree, just like that. And then I would glue this to the front of my card and add a sentiment right here. And I got the sentiment for this card just from this cut apart sheet, which is another page in the Michaels paper pad that I really like. And it's this little strip right here has little sentiments on it. And so I would just cut a piece of that off. And I just did it with my scissors to make a little dovetail. You could leave that snowflake on if you wanted to, or take it off. Made that little dovetail shape with my scissors. And then I did the same thing with just a scrap of white cardstock. So I have this white cardstock. I'm just going to cut like a 1/2 inch strip. And about that long. You can see I eyeball things a lot. Don't be afraid to do it. It's okay. It doesn't have to be precise every time. And then just layer these right on there. And here I added a few little staples and some more little stars from the sticker pack. And you can see that you have this fun little car snow shaker globe. Super fun. And this one, each one, because that sticker pack is a little different, each one is a little different. So there's the tree. And I might play with that snow a little bit and get it to lay down in there a little bit better. But that's another one that you can make using the same paper pad. Okay, how we doing? We're doing good? You guys excited to make shakers? Got to get my tape runner running again.
Virginia says it's a very pretty card, and Kim says this would be a great project for, she says, her youth. I think she means her kids.
Oh yeah, it is very fun. It is fun to do it. Okay, and I want to show you one more. And that's doing a shaker tag. And this is the tag that we're going to do. because I wanted to show you some more things you can actually put inside your shaker. And this one has candies inside of it, little sprinkles for cookies for a neighbor gift. So let me just move to my next pile of stuff, and I'll show you how to do it. And this one, I used the lid to my glitter jar. So I just had this, it's actually all gone. It was these glitters that I had from doing some resin stuff. And I just had this little lid, and it wasn't very deep. And so I thought it would make a great mold. So I'm gonna bring my mold press over again and get a piece of plastic going. Taking off both sides again. I'm just centering this plastic inside of my mold frame. You can see that once you get the hang of this, it's super, super easy to do. I'm just going to bring that up against the heat, and we'll let that heat up while we prep our the rest of our card. So this I have pre-cut. I used this paper from the paper pad. It has gold lines running through these really fun, happy stripes. And then I also used that same cut apart sheet. This is the one I've cut all up. This is the one with the strips to get this nice purple little strip that I'm going to put down at the bottom. But you could put any of these really at the bottom. All of the little strips in the cut apart sheet are really, really cute. Okay, and then I measured my lid across here, and I just used my cutting machine on this one. But if you had an existing tag, you could just find an item that would fit on your existing tag and then make a mold of that. I kind of did it the flip way of that. So I knew I wanted to use this lid. So I went in and just chose a tag in my cutting software, and I cut a 3-inch, this is about 3 inches across. So I cut a 3-inch circle out of my one layer of my tag, and that's how I got that. You could also, if you have a circle punch that you want to use to punch out the spot for your mold to come through, you could do that as well if you can find a lid or something in your house that matches your punch. Or you could punch up a bunch of your punches and stack them all up and glue them together and make a little stack of them that could become your item that you mold. Then that would exactly match your punch, which is another fun little tip to do. Okay, so that's what I did. I just pre-cut these using my Cricut machine. Okay, I'm gonna put my lid in here. It needs a little bit longer. And what I'm gonna fill with this time, my bag got opened on the bottom somehow, but these are Sweet Tooth Fairy candy sprinkles that I also picked up at Michael's. These are holiday themed ones, so they have little candy canes and little fun pastels and reds and greens in here that look really cute with this paper pad. These are so fun. And I'm going to do this as a neighbor's gift. And I'm going to tie my tag when I'm done to the cookie mix. There's also Sweet Tooth Fairy cookie mixes at Michael's that just look so cute with these little tags tied onto them. Okay, let's check on our mold press. It might be ready. Okay, I'm going to go for it. So I'm going to turn my vacuum cleaner on again. That was perfect. You'll get the hang of how long you need to do it. Timing it really is the best way. I'm kind of winging it today, but you can see that that was perfect. I didn't get any wrinkles at all in my mold. Yay. And I'm just going to let that cool. Let it cool a little bit before I pull this out, because sometimes these circle ones are a little harder to get out. But they come. Just have to finagle it a little bit. Come on, little guy. Sometimes I'll get a tool and pry it out. See, I did it so perfect that it's perfectly sealed in there. I'm being careful not to hurt my nails either. So give me just a second. Now you get to see the real life, right? So you might have a mold that is a little harder to get out. Just be patient. You're seeing real life here. and it's okay. It eventually comes out. This happened to the one that I actually used on my other tag.
While you're working on that,
yeah.
So Kim said that she clarified. She said that she's wants to use it for her church youth, and that
cool.
She's going to buy one right after the session, and that she's stoked.
Awesome. You guys are going to have fun. Yeah, it's a great thing because you can see how quick it is to make a mold. I'm going to grab my pliers to pull this out, but it's super fast to make a mold. So a lot of people can use it at the same time at an event like a youth group. It's a great idea. Okay, I'm just going to grab my pliers to get a better grip.
And then
it will come out, I promise.
Virginia asked, would you be able to line the plastic with Vaseline before molding the image to make it easier to get out?
You can. And actually, you also, We Are Memory Keepers makes a mold release, a liquid mold release. I usually don't have this much trouble. Of course, in the class, I'm going to have that much trouble. You can see that I finally got it out. Okay, so you can use mold release sprays if you're doing food items. Like we've also molded Rice Krispie treats in these before, and you can just spray that with a food spray, like Pam, or a spray coating, or a food grade mold release spray. And if you're doing other things like resin jewelry, you can do UV resin or regular resin in those you might want to use a different type of mold release spray, or the liquid mold release that you actually paint into the mold before you pour the resin in, that We Are Memory Keepers carries for the mold press machine. So those are great observations. And yes, you could put anything that will help grease it up, you can use. I don't know why that one was so tricky. It's just I waited just the perfect time. And it's a really smooth lid, and that might be why too, is it just was able to form around it just perfectly. So now I've just gone ahead and cut a 1/2 inch around my circle again. And this is actually a little bit smaller, so I'm gonna go 1/4 inch. I'll go 1/4 inch around, just because my circle's so big on my tag that I don't want my mold to poke out the sides. Okay, now I'm going to put some adhesive. Got my tape runner going again, hopefully. Yes, it's working. This has been a technically difficult class today for some reason on my end. But that's not a big deal. We got it working. Okay, so now I'm just going to center this again here. Okay, and I'm going to flip it over again. And I would actually use that same tape probably for this one, because I want it to go all the way around the edge. And this tape's really cool because you can kind of pucker it as you go. I don't know if you can see that. So I don't have to like tear it every single time. This is a sticky thumb double-sided tape. I know there's a lot of different double-sided tapes on rolls like this out there. I know that Michaels carries them, so you could pick up any of those, or if you have one at home, and just kind of go all the way around the circle. Keep going around. So you can see that's pretty fast. Okay. A little faster than the star was, just because of all the little nooks and crannies I would have had to get into to do the star all the way around on camera. Okay. And I'm going to use my piercing tool again. This is my favorite crafting tool. I'll tell you what. Scissors, piercing tool. You're covered. Okay, and I'm just going to lift the edge of the tape to separate the backer from it and just pull it off. Okay, and now it's ready to be filled with candy sprinkles. So this is Candy Cane Lane is what these sprinkles are called, and they're so cute. Make great little gift. And this way you're giving your neighbor their cookies and their sprinkles. And the sprinkles are part of the decor for making their little cookies. And I'm going to fill this one pretty full, because why not? They could use all those sprinkles on their cookies, right? And if you wanted to give them more, just choose something that's deeper than this to mold. You know, you could do a dome. I've molded half I've taken a bouncy ball and cut it in half. And then you have this nice dome, and you can put a lot more sprinkles in that way. Okay, and now we have, I'm just going to add a little bit more adhesive to the top of this tag so it will adhere. But this is, that piece all the way around that circle is going to keep my sprinkles in there instead of letting them fall out. So with shakers, that's just the trick. On the backer, you just want to make sure that you have your, the hole makes this easy to line up. So see, I just lined up my two tags. I can kind of finagle it on the front a little before it glues. Whoop, they escaped, see? Oh, you guys are really seeing me in my natural habitat. This is how it usually is when I'm preparing for a class, not when I'm teaching. You're getting to see all the mistakes. No worries though, look, just shoving them back in. Okay. One more try. Haha, we got it. Okay, and then I'm just gonna press down around there. I have one sprinkle that escaped. There we go. And make sure they're all sealed in there nice and tight. So now we have our tag shaker with the candy in it. These, I will move out of the way. Those little balls like to roll all over the place. And then to decorate the top, all I did was cut out a couple little things and use a sticker. So on this one, let's see, I'm running out of stickers, but I think maybe this deer would be cute. So I'm going to put the deer on there. You can stick things right to the front of the mold. There's a cut apart sheet somewhere in here that has like little cookies or little leaves. We could use, oh, this is what I use. So this is the piece that I did the frame out of before. You can take your scissors and just cut out a little cookie and use it as a decorative element. So this is a little holly berry cookie. You could also use hot glue around that if you worked fast enough to seal in your, so I could just put a little bit of adhesive here. I don't want to cover up too much of my sprinkles, but I just wanted a little something extra. And then you could use one of your phrases again. This one says, "Oh so jolly." Put that on there. Now you have your little shaker tag. And then I'm just going to tie it with some ribbon. There's tons of beautiful ribbon right here to the top of my cookie bag to give out as a neighbor gift. And you can write on the back of this tag because it is solid white on the back. So you could write "love your family" or to whoever on the back side of that card. So this one, because my sprinkles escaped, it's leaking a little bit. So I think that just as a tip in general, just make sure that you get the seal before you press it to the backer that is really, really clean adhesive and that it's really secure all the way around the edge of the mold. And that way your sprinkles will stay where they're supposed to stay. Those just wanted to escape on camera today. But that is the shaker card. How are we doing on time?
We have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, so I'm going to show you one more and refer you back to Ali Dosdal's video. So this is just another shaker card. And this was done in the style. So on mine that I did today, I put most of my decor and stuff right inside my shaker. And this one, it's got glitter in it, but the scene is actually on the inside of the card. So that is another way that you can build them. So you can see that all that the shaker has over here is the glitter in it. And Ali teaches this in her class really beautifully, how to do this kind of shaker card where the scene is on the inside. And those are just little fussy cut houses and trees from the paper pad. And then that's just glitter inside the shaker. And I just use a little scrap of the plastic from the mold press to put on the back of that to seal it in using Ali's technique. And it's a really easy way to also make shakers in a different way that I just wanted to show you real quick. So look for Ali's Michael's class on the mold press machine for the holidays, and she shows you how to do this style of shaker as well. Does anyone have any more questions for me before we go?
I think we're good. They loved the class. They said thank you for the presentation. Leslie said, thank you so much, Shannon. I feel so inspired. I knew nothing about the mold press going in.
Awesome. Yes, the mold press is fun. I really suggest that anybody who's interested, go look on We Are Memory Keepers website, find Allie's Michael's classes because she does a fantastic job of showing you some awesome ideas you can do with it. The possibilities really are huge as to what you can make with the mold press machine. This was just one idea. Thanks for your patience today with my technical difficulties on things on my adhesives, but I promise you that it's really easy to use, it's really fun, and you should give it a try.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye.